Have a full set of games for tonight, and wanted to really jump right into it. Another game from Eccentric Horse here. This is an e4 game against the Hungarian defense. Hungarian defense is where the bishop gets played to e7 relatively early. What's actually sort of interesting is the next game we have lined up here is out of the Philidor defense, which is d6 and then bishop e7, which is a lot of the similar concepts. But Hungarian and Philidor both involve the bishop played to e7 generally. Hey, thank you very much for the observe, Electric Horse. We're starting. I believe this is your game, right? Welcome to the stream. Hey, welcome, FIFA boy. How are you? So here's yes, Jen is the one who drew that new tactics icon. Glad people are getting some use out of it. I talk about tactics a lot, so it seems pretty well placed there. Hungarian defense is this early bishop e7. Bishop e7 is somewhat unchallenging move for black against white. The attacking square f2 is usually a pretty good target for black in the black side of the Italian game. I'm good. Yeah, it's good. It's good to see you. I just finished my class today. How are your studies going, FIFA boy? Good afternoon, El Gecko. Welcome everybody. Basically, Hungarian defense involves this bishop e7. It's on the e7 diagonal and not the c5 diagonal, and that makes a difference. Basically, castling here, there's no immediate threat. So against bishop e7, white basically just develops normally, and black has a more defensively placed bishop. This is an early d5. I guess I'm going to refer to the theory here. Moves here include bishop to b5, d takes e5, and then d5. So I guess d5 is still within the opening book, but it does cement white's pawn structure pretty early. Knight plays to b8. Which means that white has better development. H3, bishop h5, knight e2, and then bishop takes f3. So this is interesting. I was looking at this game earlier, and I saw bishop takes f3 and thought it was a good move. Basically that it moved black. It basically moved black towards an attack and doubled the f pawns. So I guess I was a little bit surprised here. The reason why it's a mistake is because the e4 pawn is hanging. This on knight e2, knight takes e4 busts for black. So I don't know what to think about this, but cool. Yeah, no. I just finished my class today myself, so yeah, no. I know the feeling of being tight on time. So yeah, it's good to have you, and definitely feel free to stop by whenever you like, FIFA boy. I'm not offended if you can't make it. So knight takes e4 is a move that wins material immediately. I don't know what to say on this type of error, except basically, I think keeping an eye on the e4 pawn is always a good idea. It can be supported with rook e1, although that would still be blocked by knight e2. I think maybe queen to d3 here. Awesome, thanks, Willem. So I'm going to add Willem's game for tomorrow at 6:05. Actually, no, sorry. I'm going to add Willem's game for tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern. Thank you very much for sending it, Willem. So basically tomorrow morning's stream. But thanks for sending it, and everybody, feel free to send games, either in the Discords or in the chat. I pick up everything, and it's super helpful when you guys send games because, it gives me a lot. I can prepare a little bit ahead of time, and also, I can basically, fill out my schedule. But thanks very much. Aphelion also on the board of moderators. No, Aphelion has been very helpful and, supportive of the stream. Really appreciate having him on, and I was very happy to see him be interested in being a moderator. So, welcome Aphelion and FIFA Boy, the original moderator, and Jen is now our moderating team. But I really appreciate everybody here, and I really appreciate you guys for being willing to put in the work required to be a moderator for the stream. So here, basically, White's got an interesting opportunity. Bishop h5, knight e2, knight takes e4. So as White, how do you try to minimize these types of errors? Because at the end of the day, that's really what it is. Like, this is just a mistake, right? I mean, White obviously isn't trying to sacrifice the e4 pawn. It's the type of error that we all make, from time to time. So I think maybe queen to d3. Queen to d3 probably is objectively the best. The best way to hold both the basically eliminate the f3 pin as well as hold the e4 pawn. The engine's pushing for rook e1. That's a bit slower. But the main point here is that whatever White's defensive move is, it will basically whatever White's defensive move is, it's better than not defending the pawn at all. I think it's just a slip in concentration. So I guess I always give the broad answer of do more tactics. Tactics, especially more quickly timed tactics, will help you not hang things. They help you be a little bit more careful and deliberate with your moves. There I'm sure are focus-related methods that people have. I've seen books that are like how a grandmaster thinks, or thinking like a grandmaster, I think was one of them. They may have, I haven't read them, they may have effective ways to reduce small one move attention errors, but at the end of the day, e4 needs to be defended. It's just a slip. These things happen for sure. I make these errors as well, but I think in general, basically, big tactical moves, big tactical training, and better tactical sight will help you be more careful for these types of things. Knight e2, bishop takes, pawn takes, knight d7, and then White has choices between either f4 or knight g3 or king g2. But basically, bishop takes f3 was not as good as knight takes e4 there. That said, bishop takes f3 is fine for White. So the answer is, why did the eval dislike bishop takes f3? It didn't. It just preferred knight takes e4, that taking the hanging pawn. So I think f4 is probably, f4, hangs the e4 pawn again. So that's the primary issue. I don't think this open file is really disastrous for White. I think there are ways that he can kind of prevent, getting attacked here. I'm not sure if castling is a great idea here either for Black. I sort of feel like the best ideas here for Black are probably something along the lines of like, knight h5, g5, knight f4, something like that. Black's basically got the open king side, which is pretty much, very objectively an advantage. So it really comes down to how Black can exploit this formation. Okay, so f4 or knight b3 or knight g3. I think f4 is too aggressive. I would play like knight g3, king g2. And wait for Black to attack and wait for some type of blockading opportunity. Knight g3, f4, bishop takes, and then either bishop takes or basically we need some way of defending e4. I think this I think the biggest errors here are basically having to do with the defense of the e4 pawn. Otherwise here it looks like it's going relatively straightforward. I mean, the game's about equal, if Black castles kingside, then there might be opportunities to attack there as well. And anyways, if anyone is interested in watching my friend Caitlin's stream, which I assume Aphelion is watching, Jen is recording that for me. No, but I will not. I am not offended at all if you guys would like to watch that as well. I gave the link the other day, and I was seeing if I could find the link quickly here. But my friend Caitlin is doing a guitar and singing performance at the moment. I think we have the same time, but you can always watch me video on demand. So if you're interested in watching her sing, and you've got the link, then definitely feel free to go over there. Not offended at all. Yeah. Go ahead. Here.
Thanks for the reminder, Aphelion.
Yeah. No, that's really nice of you to be supportive, Aphelion, for sure. So knight e5, bishop b5, knight d7, and king h1. And basically, black is going to try to cement kind of an aggressive attack here. I think g5 is probably the quickest way to do it, but I'm not sure what the soundest way to do it is. But again, with careful play, I think white can hold it off. I think there are blockading moves here that will keep the final tactical break for black from coming in. Just in terms of piece maneuvering. But it's tricky. So this ends up going sort of towards black's direction. Basically, each move here has effectively wins some material and then creates strong attacks on the white king side. I wonder if there's a good way to head this off. So electric horse. I think the most obvious improvement is there were two opportunities here where the e4 pawn became undefended, and that that's not ideal. I don't think you can comfortably sacrifice that pawn. But from here, now you have more of a strategic game to play. The position's about equal. So how does one best control the oncoming kingside attack for white? The engine can do it perfectly, right? So the engine taking into account perfect defense is able to see it out to a 0 eval. Just to clarify, you're playing. No worry. I mean, no, it's it happens. These types of these errors get made. I make them myself. Plenty of times. But that is an improvement. I think general tactical study will help you improve with that. I think if you're doing lots of tactics, you basically have to look at how the pieces fit together, and you could become more aware of kind of like, 1 and 2 move tactics. You'd be surprised. I mean, it sounds kind of broad to suggest tactical training, but you actually really do become more careful doing tactical training. You can reduce these types of errors a lot. They'll still happen occasionally, and they happen to grandmasters. These things. Nobody's perfect, and everyone makes 1 move errors occasionally. General high intensity tactics training will improve your sight on these types of things. I'm pretty confident about that. So e4 became a blind spot, but now you have kind of a more complicated question. You're seeing a plus 0.35 eval, so that means that this attack can be held, but it's tricky. How is black going to get into this situation, or how's black going to exploit this open king side? Yes, the tactics emoji, relevant once again. I think it's like the main. I mean, there's a reason why that was the first emoji or emote that we came up with. I think it's very relevant. Let's look. 21 e5, a good move. Well, I mean, first the engine. The engine says it's unsound. So I'm not gonna beat that eval. But let's try to think about how why in particular that might be unsound electric horse. Basically, I think your king side is vulnerable. So in terms of strategy, your biggest problem is going to be that. I like f4. I think f4 is a good idea. But I think with e5, basically you end up getting some, basically pressure is able to be exerted on the king side. Neutralizing the center here provides open lines for attack, and that I think is dangerous. Pawn takes, bishop takes, queen g4, queen d6, rook e1, and queenside castles. And basically black is, black is better here. I think, opening this king side is probably risky. I said f4. f4 does, create attacking chances, but it also definitely opens up the king side for attack. It basically makes it actually helps so that the knight has more trouble posting at f3. But here, these are very double-edged moves that that leave your king somewhat open to an attack by the queen on e4. I think here rook e1 is probably the play, but I really want to I want to do this correctly and really figure out kind of where the misstep was here, because I think this is an attack that I think basically white can hold this position. I like knight g3, and I like knight f5, but g6 prevents knight f5, so there's that consideration. A really aggressive way to play this would be bishop takes e5, and then bishop takes e5, and then f4. And this is a little bit different because here, the queen hasn't moved to e7 yet. So you still have time to kind of protect e4 with knight to g3. And the king side is very, loose, but it can basically, I think it can basically be held together. Moves like knight g3 and queen g4 here will be enough to keep the king side, keep any material from getting lost on the king side. So yeah, king h1, a6, bishop a4, b5, bishop b3, bishop f6. White's in pretty good shape. So what's the recommended move? The recommended move is c3. I think the logic behind this is so that you can comfortably post knight to d4. But I'm not 100% sure why you can't post knight to d4 now. You're definitely going to need something to keep, probably f3, actually, to keep the e4 pawn from getting attacked. But I like knight d4 here. Here, like knight c5, knight f5. Nah, all right, maybe bishop takes and knight c6. Yeah, I think this is probably the best idea. And maybe the queen may play to h4 here and draw. The bishop, well, but then the queen's under attack on knight c6. So, here, like, knight to d4. I like knight to d4. I mean, ideally you'd want the knight posted on f5. But knight to d4, knight c5, knight f5. I think is pretty solid. Bishop takes, knight to c6, and the queen's under attack. So the queen's the main thing. On c3. So yeah. I mean, that's an idea. Playing c3 here, allows for knight to d4, allows for the bishop to provide a resource. Defending e4. Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion, Willem. That also is probably a good way to do it. The bishop on b3 here is white's worst piece. This is locked in by this pawn, and I don't really see any way to get that pawn off of that d5 square. It just seems like it's pretty much anchored there. So yeah, so I actually do think I think you're right, Willem. I think that c3 makes a lot of sense. Among other things, it blocks off this bishop, so this bishop's worsened, and this threat on b2 is no longer there. But also, bishop c2 helps. So then c3, and then say like queen e7, probably setting up for queenside castling. Bishop to c2, and this e4 pawn is defended. White's big problems here involve open lines, and basically involve the queen. The queen being able to attack on h3 or e4. With bishop c2, white improves his worst piece here. Like, if you were going to look at this position, right, you can literally count out the pieces. Like, this knight is fine, might participate in defense or might go to d4. This bishop is involved in defense and has, good place, has the potential to be placed. Or trade on e5. This bishop is the only one that really has no mobility here. And with c3, that bishop c2 move provides the ability to defend e4, which is going to become a relevant defensive move in this attack. So I think that c3 opportunity, bishop to c2, improves the best piece. That may be the best route of action for white. Overall here, though, I think this does loosen up the king side too much. Given how exposed the white king is, I think white needs to be pretty careful and not open too many lines. It's kind of a tough question because how do you advance your attack without opening lines? That's kind of tricky. Here, I think queen g4 is a good move, but these white squares were better closed. Yes, so either through f3 here, and I'm sort of curious about the eval for f3. I mean, f3 I think is fine, but this this diagonal, basically this diagonal is already somewhat compromised. I don't think there's much that can be done there. But f3 I think is a better strategic play. I think basically allowing this white diagonal to start attacking the king, or allow pieces onto that, the queen, is going to be too much of an attack for white. That's just going to cause too many problems. So overall, I basically think this attack was, a try, and that's definitely, it's definitely good to try. I think I think that's right, Electric. I mean, that's sort of what I'm trying to get at. Like, I think given how exposed this king side was, the correct way to proceed with an attack was probably like rook e1 here. Yes. Well, you were. Yeah. No, I think white's in pretty good shape. But, the purpose of bishop takes f3 here is to open your king side. So, you are, you definitely were better as of here. And then here it's, you're equal-ish, but you definitely, you definitely have a lot of game to play left in this game. So, it's a game, basically. You play chess is the motto for that. But something like knight g3, knight f5 is probably something that you want to do. But, given that, this trade has happened, bishop takes f3, doubling this pawn and giving the open g file to attack the king, you really, you have to play more carefully with this type of, pawn structure. It would be great if you could get knight g3 and then trade off the knights on g3, or trade it to basically get the file closed again. But an open g file is pretty dangerous for the king. There's no, I mean, it's just the case. So this, the bishop takes f3 was played so that black could attack you. You can get rid of this attack, but you're gonna have to be careful basically the whole game. And then I think when you start basically moving this pawn structure and allowing for attacking along the long white square diagonal, this I think is more more mobility than you can provide black and be comfortable. I think rook e1 makes sense. These moves, basically these make sense. Queen takes is I think a good amount better than rook takes. But I guess by this point, the kind of damage is done. This king side is too open. So given that the g file was already open, making this position more open with an attack is a little bit right. And it often is. But the thing about it is that since you castled and you committed first with castling, so given that black was interested in given that that black was not yet castled, and you couldn't guarantee that he was going to castle kingside, that basically became a liability. If black castles here, then definitely rook g1 and those types of moves, provide an open line of attack, for sure. But here, there was nothing to obligate black to castle kingside. You were committed, but black was not. So given that, I think that bishop takes f3 was a risky way to play it. But I still think you're fine. I think even with this open kingside accurate play, you're okay. But I think that opening it up further with this central attack was too much. Instead of this attack, f4 and e5, like neutralizing the center gave these open lines that were super powerful for black. I think instead of giving those open lines, locking things up more with like solid moves like f3, and then being prepared to get attacked. You're gonna get attacked on the king side for sure, but maybe hoping for him to castle queen side and then a4. You will get counterplay as white. I think you'll be able to defend effectively, and you will eventually get counterplay as white. But I think that as opposed to the center counterplay, which opens the position more and potentially leads to open lines on your king, I think instead moves like a4 later are a better way to do this. Like that would be a better attack. So I would say, given that this king is open, solidify in the center and use the queen side as your point of advancement. I don't know if you'll get that counterplay. It's possible that black plays overly aggressively. Well, in this position, no. I mean, Tal is a master, but I think here you were getting attacked to. I think more conservative play would give you better chances. I think opening the center when the king side is open just allows too many lines. I think your best play is probably like a4 and undermining moves on the queen side that don't compromise your king. So like king side is open, keep the center solid, but be okay with advancing an attack on the queen side because it's not irrelevant to the open squares around your king. And I think you'd be okay here. I mean, the engine's giving you about an equal eval, but pushing the center too hard it carried over. Like the center is too close to the king side. If you if you moved on the queen side, that doesn't compromise your king safety in any way. But if you're moving in the center, that could potentially compromise your king safety, and that's what happened here. So if your king side is under attack, and exposed, look to the queen side before you look to the center. I guess it would be my takeaway. From a strategic perspective. So like solidifying with like f3 or c3, bishop c2. Those are the moves that I would play first, and then be ready to play a4, and maybe you'll be able to generate some good counterplay on the queen side and force black to start retreating from his attack. Black's attack is not guaranteed to get through. The engine sees it getting stopped. Practically speaking, it's an attack, and you will have to play accurately to get rid of it. Look at the opposite side attack before the central attack with an open king side. Strategic, just from a strategic perspective. Otherwise, I think after the king side was opened, these lines of attack became too strong for black. This e4 pawn became a big liability. Like knight takes b3, queen takes d5, and then you have that open attack on the king. It's just tricky and difficult to manage. The position's too open with the king too exposed. I think it was better to lock in the center and then attack on the queen side. And then once this happens, it's pretty much black. Black has a good edge going into the end of the game. But very interesting. But that's the strategic takeaway. So in terms of looking at this game, I think you definitely need to pay attention to the e4 pawn in the opening. There were opportunities where black could take it, and that was a problem. The second thing that I think is worth improving, especially since you explained your thought process, is the G file. Having an open G file can be great, can put really great pressure on G7, but you don't know that the king is going to castle kingside yet. So you could end up with an open file against the G file. So I would, before voluntarily opening up your G file, make sure that the black king is going to castle kingside, or has castled kingside. That just wasn't enough of a certainty here. But I like the idea, and I like the spirit. I like the attacking spirit. I don't stop that. I'm a big tactical player myself, and I think that that's a great way to play. Great, you get some great attacks, and it's a fun game to play. So that's, that stylistically I think is great. But in reality here, you've committed to having your king on an open file. Black has not yet made that commitment. So I would wait a few more moves before allowing bishop takes f3. I do like queen d3 first, and then then you can play knight g3 or knight e2, knight g3. Something like that, but I think you might not want to voluntarily open your kingside for an open G file until the king has castled kingside, and you're sure that open G file is going to be a route for attack on your opponent as opposed to an attack by your opponent on you. Yeah. But overall, I think it was an interesting game, Electric. I think you definitely have some good thoughts here. Keep attacking. I think that's great, a great way to play. But yeah, this attack opened your king's side further when your king's safety was already compromised. I think just slowing it down just a little bit is a good idea. And if your king side is exposed, then look to the queen side before you look to the center. Overall, very interesting game, Electric. Thank you very much for sending it, and yeah, please keep sending them over. I'm super interested in seeing these games, and I really appreciate you sending it over and stopping by. Appreciate it. All right, the next game. This game is from El Gecko. El Gecko is playing white, and I said the last game was a Hungarian defense. This is a Philidor defense. And I was thinking they sort of transpose into the same thing because, basically Hungarian defense involves bishop e7 and d6, and Philidor defense also involves bishop to e7 and d6. So, I think there's a lot of... yeah, no, totally, Electric. No, I really appreciate you sending the game, and always, even if you can't make the stream or this time isn't convenient for you, definitely feel free to send games in. I'm not offended at all if it's more convenient for you to watch on video on demand. My goal here is really just to make chess lessons free. So if you can, if you can't make it but you're interested in analysis, don't let that stop you. Just keep sending games. It's all super helpful to making the stream work. Appreciate you coming by, and appreciate you joining the stream. Yeah, so here, knight takes d6 and bishop to e7 are going to be the common squares for black. I think there's a lot of potential transpositions between the Philidor and the Hungarian. Interesting. Knight d7 seems to give the opportunity for a crazy tactic here. Let's take a look at this. This is actually super interesting. Okay, so knight e6, pawn takes e6, queen h5, king e7, bishop takes. Wow, this is crazy. Bishop takes, queen e8, knight d5, king d8, and yeah, this is pretty nuts. And then queen takes e8, king takes e8, knight takes c7, and wins the rook. But wow, that was wild. So this would be a great opportunity. This is a tough tactical one to see. But knight to e6 is actually what the computer is suggesting here. Knight to e6 either forces the queen to move away from the defense on c7. Yeah, big time. Yeah, no, for sure. That's this is a tough one to see though. But that would have been a crazy quick put away. Yeah, no, it's great, Electric. I think Electric. If you want to play like Tal, the best thing to do, even more than everyone else, is really get your tactical vision as good as it possibly can be. That is, I think that's your real, opportunity. If you Tal, I don't really even know how he did it prior to the invention of computer tactics training, but his tactics are ridiculous. Way better than everybody, way better than probably all the other world champions except maybe like Carlsen, or I mean, really, really, really high level, or Marshall maybe. Anyways, tactics training in particular is important if you're interested in a tactically oriented game. Well, it definitely is a great tactic. I think it's awesome. Knight e6, it's kind of even a tactical idea that you might overlook. A move that basically forks the queen and c7 pawns, but on the recapture of the piece allows for an open file. It's kind of crazy, and it sort of capitalizes on black's underdevelopment here, but the engine finds it. So this knight to e6, pawn takes e6 was an improvement. So knight to e6, f takes e6, queen take h5, king to e7, and bishop takes e6. This looks pretty monstrous for white. Queen e8 is basically forced first, and then after that you trade off and win the rook, and then you're actually only up an exchange. But you've totally mangled. You're up an exchange in 2 pawns, and you've mangled black's pawn structure. No, and I think that's one of the things that's so cool about this one is it's not even like one of the normal kind of opening trap. Not opening trap, but opening tactical wins. You always look to bishop takes f7 or like queen to h5 here or something. But knight to e6 is actually the one move that's busting. Super interesting. But yeah, knight e6. Just as I don't know how often you'll see black get underdeveloped in this way, but knight e6 was actually the cool play here. I guess moves like knight e6 really only work if knight to d7 is played. Otherwise, the bishop's defending the e6 square. Having an e6 square this undefended is unusual. So I'm not sure how often this is going to come up, but anyways, it's a very cool looking tactic. So I wanted to give it its moment. Knight e5, bishop b3, c5, knight f3, bishop g4, and here you've got a okay. So here's one that I actually really want to show you, because this is one that comes up. This is a very classic book thing in the Philidor. The Philidor basically allows you to sack your queen sometimes on d1. Knight takes, and I think it's called legalmate. Bishop takes f7, knight, king e7, knight to d5. But that actually was available at this on this move. So knight takes e7, or knight takes e5, bishop takes f7. The best move for black then becomes pawn takes e5, and then you get the free bishop. But this one is also very important. It's a kind of something that people talk about in the Philidor defense as being one of those things that white can sometimes capitalize on. That's the one that literally is the one though. It's this legalmate knight takes e5. So white was getting some good tactics here. One thing about the Philidor defense is that this bishop has more opportunities than it normally does. By definition, basically, or Philidor defense involves e5 and d6. E5 means that the e6 pawn is not going to. Yeah, right. No, it's they have it in the it's in the Philidor defense too. It basically, happens when this bishop gets really good opportunities. Bishop takes f7, and then knight takes e5 here would threaten legalmate. Instead, this gets a bit more open than would be ideal. Knight takes f3, bishop takes b7. Okay. There's a number of ways that white can play this. I'm looking at bishop to e3 first, thinking that this knight would be undefended and have to move. But e5 also looks like it works, and queen d3 also looks like it works. But this actually isn't as dangerous as it looks. Basically, this h2 pawn is not going to get taken, and this bishop is not going to be able to provide an attacking force on h2. So queen to d3, and I think, queen to d3, castles, and like b4 or something, or maybe even e5 with this kind of backward tactical threat. Anyways, this is pretty good for white. Let's see. This ends up, this ends up being a pretty brutal mate that way. But there were a number of opportunities, tactical opportunities that came even before this. One of the things that it's important about this position is the value of the legalmate. The legalmate, happens when this bishop gets good opportunities on f7, and the knight can, exploit a bishop that's on bishop to g4. If knight c6 is played, legalmate usually doesn't happen. So, like, say bishop, I'm just setting one up here, but like, just say like this situation. Legalmate's not going to be possible because knight to e5 is going to be met by knight takes e5, and this bishop's not going to be defended. But yeah, the Philidor defense allows white's bishop to be very strong, because e6 is not going to be played against the threat on f7, and d5 is not going to be played against the threat on f7. So basically, you know that the bishop's going to get this strong diagonal in Philidor defense. And just Philidor defense is defined as e4, e5, knight f3, d6. But this bishop c4 will always get that line in this particular defense, unless basically black wants to make redundant moves like c6, d5. But otherwise, that threat's going to be really powerful. I don't know that one specifically, Electric, but there's some excellent Philidor lines where there's legalmate. Like, I can even Google it, but like Philidor legalmate. There's so like, they're talking about this like, this is probably, I'm just going to play through this really quick. This is probably the most obvious legalmate, something like this. But yeah, overall, I know it against the Philidor. It happens with bishop takes f7 and those types of opportunities. Anyways, things to take out of this game. Obviously, it's a 23 move win, so I might not have as much to add, in terms of white. I think overall white basically plays a really good game to win 23 moves, so that as generally happens. But yeah, knight e6 was actually an opportunity here. This tactic playing through, pawn takes, queen there, king there, bishop there, and then queen e8 or anything else, so say g6. Here, queen takes g6, and then knight d5 becomes a super big threat, and also f7. Basically, queen e8 needs to be played in response to anything that white does. Black immediately needs that d8 escape square. So knight e6 is a win for white here. And then in addition, you have a legalmate type win here. Knight takes, bishop d1, bishop takes, king up, knight there, checkmate. Or knight takes, pawn takes, queen takes, and then you just win a piece. So either of those were earlier opportunities for white. That said, this still quickly establishes a pretty crushing attack on black. Awesome win on move 23. No. I'm sure I would get something out of it. I'll check it out. There's a lot of games where I may have seen them at various points, but I haven't seen them recently. That's not one of the ones that I'm super familiar with, so I should probably take a look and look it over again. Definitely interested, Electric, and I'll check it out after the stream for sure. But yeah, good win. Great tactics, El Gecko. There were two tactical improvements that we've now gone through. But yeah, overall, Philidor's defense can lead to some pretty good attacking opportunities for white. You know, eventually you got one of them. This game was also valuable in showing the value of knight e6 for breaking open this king side. But both of those ideas were there. This one is weirder. This one, you know, to be honest, I mean, I don't see knight d7 that frequently, so knight e6, you know, is a not an obvious move, given that knight d7 is relatively uncommon. But a super interesting game, awesome, cool to see Lee Gal's mate, and I think this knight e6 move provides an instructive way to see potentially a new type of way to attack an underdeveloped black side. Knight e6. Yeah, knight e6 wins, capitalizes on underdevelopment. Yeah, no, thank you so much for sending the game, El Gecko. I really appreciate it, and this knight e6 is a cool one. It would be cool to see this worked into one of our games in the future. Yeah, no, thank you very much for joining us, Electric, and really appreciate you sending the game and adding material for the stream. Super helpful for me. I really appreciate it. Hope to see you again soon. Yeah, so on to the next game. This game is from Squash, who is playing white. Squash played the London game in this. D4, D5, Bishop F4, E6. He played one interesting move that I was looking over this one before the stream. He plays a really interesting move here. I'm pretty sure this is gonna be in the opening book. I didn't look at it with the engine or opening book, but I was just running through the board analysis. So this is in the opening book, I assume. But white plays a really interesting move here. No, not at all, Porgs. Definitely send any game that you think you'd like me to take a look at. The next open slots that I have are tomorrow afternoon at 6 p.m. or 6:05 p.m. But I'm happy to take a look at the game. You can either send it on the Discord or in this chat, and I'll take a look at it and make it tomorrow at this same streaming time. But yeah, good question, Porgs. No, send anything. I like having as much material, you know, as possible. Basically, it makes it way easier to look at stuff ahead of time and to schedule my streams. So yeah, thanks for asking, Porgs. But okay, so cool. So Squash played a really cool move here. I wanted to really think about it because it was interesting and novel, and I always think that those types of moves are good. You know, at least to look at. Bishop to e5 is really interesting, because among other things, you know, so bishop takes, and then knight takes, and knight gets this outpost. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that's, you know, reasonably good for white. So basically, look, this is an excellent move, and it's pretty close to the eval for, you know, close to best eval for white. It's not much worse than bishop g3, which is given as the best eval, and yet this opening, you know, this opening has 8 responses in the opening book for white, of which none of them is bishop e5. So, you know, I bet some of the ones on this list, like bishop to g5, is probably worse than yeah. So look, so bishop g5, which is in the opening book, is responded to by queen b6, giving a you know, an edge to you know, basically an edge to black. It is a really interesting move because the most natural move to deflect it here, right, would be f6. And that definitely weakens the black king side. You know, white plays bishop takes d6, queen takes d6, c4, but you know, it provides, you know, basically it stops the knight from developing to its most natural square, and provides potentially an open diagonal for the queen on h5. So it was a really interesting idea that nobody in the opening book had played before. So cool, interesting. So how is black, and now we're out of the opening book. How's black supposed to respond to this? Like, it's sort of, I mean, it's interesting. On bishop takes e5, I don't think that's really that great for black. I think white plays knight takes e5, and then, you know, maybe the knight challenges with knight d7. or sorry, knight d7, and then like either, you know, queen g4, probably queen g4, knight takes, queen takes, or no, I don't think that's possible. No. So queen g4, pawn takes, and then this g7 pawn is hanging. And he probably has to play like g6, but then his dark squares get really weak. It's really actually very interesting move. You know, it's awesome. I mean, it's great to come up with a new move that's very playable. Like, interesting idea. You know, there are some fundamental things that aren't necessarily the best about it. You know, in general, it's not great to move the same piece twice in an opening. But I think something like, but I definitely do think that you're supposed to either play bishop to g3 or takes, or this third option, which I had never considered, which was bishop to e5. Cool. I mean, cool. Like legitimately. So basically, on bishop to e5, you know, you eliminate the weakest thing, which is if you play a natural developing move like knight to c3. Black plays bishop takes f4, pawn takes f4, and your center's pretty diminished. Like, you know, you don't have the ability to play e4, and you have good defense over the e5 square, but your center's definitely worse, and you have doubled pawns. Bishop to e5, on bishop takes e5, knight takes e5, you still have exactly the same pawn structure. So, you know, I think that's definitely a better pawn structure than the pawns here. Like, it's definitely better to have this pawn structure than it is to have this pawn structure. And that's what would happen if you played a normal developing move there. So I think basically, you know, this is one of those cases where, you know, you're kind of moving away. This is a place where it's okay to diverge from moving the not moving the same piece twice in an opening. Bishop e5, interesting. Knight takes e5, knight to d7, queen h5, knight takes, queen takes, knight f6, and like bishop d3. And now, you know, with everything sort of off the board, you're in a good place. Black has a good pawn structure, but white also has a pretty good pawn structure. You know, white could play c3 to match black, doesn't really matter that much. And white has healthier development. Overall, I think, you know, this engine says it's equal, but I think this feels slightly better for white to me. This bishop is definitely better than black's white squared bishop. And you know, there's going to be healthy development from the knight on b1 to d2. And, you know, and basically no king safety threats. It's largely symmetrical, except you have better minor pieces. Anyways, this plays out great for white. Super interesting idea, new idea in the London opening, London system. Yeah, I mean, interesting. Cool. Yeah, so white's basically, you know, white basically advances on the black king side with his pieces, and then this is man, that's a bummer. But basically, white is doing great here, and I think, you know, really starting to get a pretty dangerous attack on the h7 square in the black king side. And then unfortunately traps his queen with h4. That is a bummer. Well, the first thing, okay, so I'm gonna make the normal, you know, saying you got to go look at your tactics. They'll help you avoid types of things like this, and they'll make bishop e8 a more visible move. But this really is sort of a bummer, because in this game you've basically, you know, played an opening that I've never seen before, which was very playable, and then basically got an attack that's going to lead you towards a good position. This is, you know, the engine has you at plus 0.6 here, but I'm sure that it's actually better. And you have, you know, in terms of practical comp, it's definitely something over 0.6. I mean, white is basically attacking, and if you're attacking, you generally have a practically better eval than the computer gives you, because the computer defends so accurately. Yeah, this is a bummer. But yeah, h4 just swings the position, you know, 9 points. It just that's too bad. Yeah, and then the game just kind of well, actually, these are way better chances for white than I thought you were gonna get. Awesome. Oh man, and then you win anyways. Oh, that was epic. Okay, wow, that's crazy. Wow. So you came back from like, okay, so I was pretty much gonna end this eval, but like, wow, you really just sort of, so from here you're really in trouble, and then you just sort of incrementally keep attacking, and end up getting the exchange back, okay, and then you end up, I mean, yeah, this is a really cool game, and then you end up, basically getting the rook for a queen. That's awesome. What a cool game, Squash. This one's a really cool one. And then you go into a winning rook and pawn endgame. Awesome. I really like this one a lot. This is a really cool game, Squash. Thank you for sending this one. The tactical play is all really interesting, and it's awesome that you won this game out of this. Really, really cool. But to be honest, you did great tactically. You outplayed your opponent by about 7 points from move like 13 or whatever, or basically, after move 14, you outplay your opponent tactically by 7 points at least. So good work. In terms of things that are instructive about this game, the one that I would all right. So you win tactically. Your opponent makes some errors. You capitalize, which is great, but not winning tactically is not the most instructive. It's awesome that you did it, and it gives it basically gives me encouragement to be slower to resign for sure. But overall here, yeah, I mean, it's awesome that you came back and won this game. It's really really cool win. The most instructive thing here actually is, I think, this opening, which I'm really kind of curious about. Bishop to e5. That's a new idea. I want to look at, like, maybe after the stream I'll take a look at like Mega Database or like a bigger database to see if people have actually tried this. But this was a really cool idea. It deals with this problem, which is bishop retaking on f4. And it it basically offers to trade your white's bad bishop for black's good bishop, and it doesn't move the queen forward. So on the recapture, you move up with development. Interesting idea. I want to see if anyone's actually played this before, because that's a cool idea and something to think about as a surprise weapon. Cool. And then you get your queen. The queen gets stuck. Good tactical sight might steer you clear of this kind of issue. But it's all basically tactics from here. I guess we could spend another minute or two on this rook and pawn endgame, but yeah, basically you really outplay your opponent tactically and win. Awesome. Cool. So takeaways from this game. The biggest one, I think, is basically be very careful about your queen's mobility. Even during an attack, your opponent can if your opponent can get in the tactical shot that they need to win your queen, that's really a problem. So definitely monitor your queen's mobility and try to get it not to be stuck with moves like h4. Other than that, you played an excellent game. I mean, you really executed better tactically than your opponent, and you played into a slightly better rook and pawn endgame and won that pretty effectively. And then you invented a new opening. So overall, I don't know exactly what to make of this game, but it's a cool opening that I'm tempted to take. That I'm going to take a more extended look at. Hey, thank you very much. Thanks very much for the observe, Lord. Appreciate it. Yeah, and then basically you outplay your opponent tactically in the middle of the game, win a slightly better rook endgame. The error, you had one big error, which was hanging your queen because it got too immobile, and then you won. So, good work. That my improvement there is watch your queen's mobility. That's the mistake that I see for you this game. Bishop e5 was a really cool move too. So thank you for sending that one, Squash. Really interesting. Hey, welcome back, Blue Parallax. Thank you for joining the stream. Yeah, so let's go on to the next one. This is Big Green's game. Big Green is a mod for the yeah, of course I remember you, Blue Parallax. Yeah, no, it's nice to see you back. But yeah, so this is Big Green's game, and Big Green is a moderator on the chess study group app. I'm good, Blue Parallax. Yeah, this is good. Went through a very exciting game and a number of very good games, instructive ones, and I finished my cybersecurity class today, so that was a big thing for me at least. Hopefully I'll get a little bit more time now that class is finished. But yeah, so this is interesting. Let's look at this. So this is Slav. This is semi-Slav. Knight to c3, knight to f6, and knight to f3, and then a number of options for black here. This is like the big diverging point. c6 is the most common, probably the most generally solid. Bishop e7 develops a piece and sets up black for castling. Bishop to b4. Thanks, Blue. No, thank you. D takes c4, queen a4, knight bd7, and queen takes c4. Yeah, no, this is good. Basically, strong development for white, and yeah, overall pretty good. I don't know, knight b5 threatening c7, but interesting. On c5, what should white do? This is c5 is an aggressive way for black to challenge white's center. I like it in general. I'm actually considering switching to d4, d5, c4, c5 as black. I like the kind of immediate challenge that it provides to the white center, and this is similar to that opening. Here, e3 is playable. C takes d5 is playable. So let's take a look at both. So c takes d5, knight takes d5, and then e4, and you sort of transpose it into a Grunfeld, which makes sense. And then c takes d4, c takes d4, and white has big spatial advantage, good development. I'm sure this is a positive eval for white. Yeah, bishop b4 is the best response, then followed by bishop d2, and maybe trade the bishops, and then just develop normally with a better center. So that line works out pretty well for white. On the other sides, the options are on the other side, so that was c takes d5. The other option is e3. Pawn takes, and white still probably has the better center here. He's running. It's like a Queen's Gambit declined center. c6 is going to provide a good outpost for the knight's development. Yeah, the Grunfeld lesson was last night at 6:05 p.m. Eastern. Yeah, we had a Grunfeld game that I played with. Wait. I thought it was. Oh wait. Actually, I have the list so I can see. Yeah, Grunfeld was yesterday at 10 a.m. Eastern. We'll take a further look at the Grunfeld in the future, but I was able to pair the Grunfeld theory with yeah, no, totally. No, it was really interesting, Grunfeld, and then I got an opportunity to play the Grunfeld against Piano Man in a side game, so I got to show that game kind of as part of the thing. But it was yesterday morning, and you'll definitely be able to find it on video on demand. Knight c6, c5, knight e4, bishop d2, queen takes, castles. And here, basically, now I think center control is a little bit less clear. I'm a little confused about why it steers away from g3. I guess it's proposing c takes d5, but I think there's multiple good moves here. I think, yeah, like bishop to d3 could be good. It's kind of a tough position, though. I have to think a little bit about what exactly how white does this the most efficiently. But I don't think... I don't know. I wonder about g3 and the bishop on that file, but I don't see anything immediately wrong with it. So knight c6, c5, knight e4, bishop d2, queen takes, and castles. And here, basically, you know, what does white do to improve here? Bishop d3 potentially. Bishop g2, okay. Queen f6, castles, b6. I think white's fine. It looks about equal to me. I have some questions about you know, whether this was the best diagonal for the bishop. I think pairing this bishop on g2 with c5 was not the best idea. I think that you can sort of do one or the other, because the issue with bishop g2 paired with c5 is that the d5 pawn is pretty much unmovable here. This diagonal is going to be not a great one for the light-squared bishop, probably for the rest of the game. You know, black has no incentive to play e5 or make any move that's going to result in the d5 pawn leaving that square. So here, you know, I don't know. Looks about equal, and yeah, great, Aphelion. Yeah, no, she is great. She's totally great, and yeah, I'm trying to figure out a better way, because I don't think her Sessions Live allows for us to I don't think Sessions Lives allows for video on demand the same way Twitch does. But hopefully she'll have some form of video on demand in the future. But yeah, thank you for watching that, Aphelion. I'm sure she appreciated it. Anyways, this yeah, this is interesting. So bishop b7, rook d1, rook d8, a4, a5, and yeah, I mean, basically, white has good chances on the queen side here. Moves like rook c1, challenging the c file, rook b8, rook c1. This looks pretty good. White should be able to win this, I think. I think going into this endgame, having two minor pieces versus the rook is a win. Basically, black, I don't think, should have allowed this trade. Rook dc8. I don't know. Rook takes b2 is evaluated as best, but yeah, maybe she should do Twitch. I don't know. I'll ask her about it. But yeah, she's a great singer, and she does streaming twice a week on Mondays and Fridays. So yeah, I like that idea a lot, actually. Cool idea. Cool idea, Jack. But yeah, so here, maybe rook takes c6. This is complicated, and the rook pair is less pronounced. Like it's more pronounced advantage to have you know, rook and knight versus a single rook than it is to have rook, bishop, and knight against two rooks. But I still feel like white should be better here. The engine's advocating a6. Here, you know, basically, you know, bishop f1 is happening on the next move. Overall, you know, and overall, I'm just going to play to the end here. Yeah, cool. Oh, man. What happened? Well, okay, so queen takes f6 definitely at the end. So so this is sort of an unfortunate game-ending blunder. Like, queen f6, you know, obviously is a win for white. Yeah, that's too bad. Okay, but let's go back to the strategic points of this game. Kind of a bummer finish, though, to be honest. You were in really good shape. But yeah, I think basically c takes d5 is playable here. Is the first thing. So c takes don't I wouldn't be afraid to play c takes d5. C takes d5 either leads to a symmetrical endgame, or that this game definitely has a bummer endgame. But c takes d5, c takes d5, bishop to d2, and basically white's in good shape here. This is this is a better alternative, I think. Pairing c5 with bishop g2 is not I think strategically is not the best idea. Bishop to g2 is only an effective diagonal if the diagonal is open. The really powerful bishop diagonals go to a8. Here, if if there really is no clear way to get rid of this d5 pawn, and once it's basically once it's I don't want to say passed, but basically once it's supported by the e6 pawn, bishop to g2 is clearly the best idea. Sorry, bishop to g2 is clearly an idea that's going to run into the d5 pawn. So bishop g2, and this bishop is stuck, and does not have an obvious way to fix it. It's an interesting question. Should you? I think for reasons relating to this g3 move, c takes d5 here is a better move. If he plays c takes d5, then g3. I guess either way. If basically g3 is increased in value by trading on d5. This outcome is not a good outcome for the bishop on g2, having the stuck pawn on d5. Either way, after pawn takes d5, either with the knight takes, so knight takes, in which case g3, and then the bishop will have this full diagonal, or pawn takes, in which case black will have an isolated queen pawn. This will be a little bit harder to break through, but it's not going to be supported the same way that e6 supports d5. Here you can play like g3, bishop g2, bishop to d5, and basically you're attacking a fixed point, and this diagonal is much less clearly closed. This is the structure that you need to avoid with g3 and bishop g2. I think g3 and bishop g2 are a playable set of moves for white here. I think there is definitely reasonable ideas that stem from having a bishop on that long diagonal, and then castling with the bishop on g2. But in order for it to work, you need to disrupt these two pawns. Otherwise, it's basically gonna be stuck. It's gonna be unable to break through this d5 e6 structure. So g3, c5, and now this is basically white. I think is in pretty good. White ends up in reasonably good shape. But this is still now his weakest piece because of this unmovable d5 pawn. So that was a strategic improvement here. Overall, I think this is good. I think once you get to two minor pieces versus a rook, you need careful defense, but this will play out favorably to you. And those two minor pieces should be able to advance this this a pawn to queen. And then you just have that small error at the end, which unfortunately is decisive, but it's just a one-move error that I don't think you would do given enough time. But I try not to focus on the tactical things too much. I think it's way more instructive to think about this about the value of this g3 bishop g2 fianchettoing. The bishop g3 bishop g2 fianchettoing works if the d5 pawn is not anchored. If the d5 pawn is anchored, then bishop g2 does not work, and it gets stuck basically biting. I think they call it biting granite, but basically facing off against the d5 pawn. Yeah, I figure, you know, the biggest part of my, you know, I think the biggest piece of advice that I can give everyone under the rating of 2000 is really spend a lot of time doing tactics. Tactics being tactical puzzles, and using tactics trainers like Chess Tempo, Puzzle Battle on chess.com, Puzzle Rush on chess.com. Really just putting in a lot of time there. Every master has put in a lot of time on tactics. But at the end of the day, that's something that you need to do sort of on yourself, you know, on your own. I can tell you to do it, but it's basically homework that needs to be done by you that I can't help with. But I think that really is the most efficient way to improve when you're under 2000, is just that tactical study. But what I can actually teach, as opposed to just, you know, encourage, like basically saying, you know, I'm sort of saying, you know, the quickest way to improve is do your homework, and I strongly believe that that's true at class level. Yeah, Jen's working on it, the guacamole emote. Hey, Caitlin! Thanks for joining the stream, Caitlin. Nice to see you. Jen recorded the stream on my phone, I think, but I'm looking forward to seeing it. Yeah. So basically, you know, I want to focus these lessons on like strategic concepts, and I think explaining the G3 Bishop G2, you know, is more valuable if this D5 pawn is not anchored. Is the best thing to do here. Yeah, of course. No, thanks, Caitlin. Yeah, awesome job. I'm sure I'll get a good opportunity to see the stream later. Caitlin's next stream is in Monday at 6 p.m. Jen plays a little, but not too much. But yeah, so overall, I think this basically trades into a good end game. You win the game, but then make a one-move error. So you know, these things happen. But I wanted to really focus on that G3 Bishop G2 diagonal versus that D5. Either way, neutralizing that D5 so that it was an isolated queen pawn or not there was a tactical improvement there, sorry, was a positional improvement there. The other stuff is pretty much all tactics. There's probably some efficiencies here, but it should have been a win at a few different points. But tactical study is something that I think everyone has to do on their own in order to improve. And when you do, you'll win games like this. You know, tactical study would be a good deciding factor in a few different points here. So I think that's the next step for you, Big Green. And I think yeah. No, never feel bad skipping my stream. My goal is just free chess lessons, you know, as a big concept, so never feel bad about skipping the stream. You can always watch on video on demand. So I'm never offended if you need to skip for any reason, really, and I'm not offended if the schedule doesn't work for you either. But yeah, anyways. Good job, Caitlin. I'm looking forward to seeing the video that Jen made. Cool. So yeah, thanks for the game, Big Green. Please keep sending them. Super helpful, and really, you know, it's interesting to see. But I think other than just the overarching suggestion to do lots of tactics, I think the main positional takeaway was when is G3 better and worse. And it's better if the D5 pawn is vulnerable and not fully supported. Let's see. Oh, Jen. But really, I'm not offended though. I promise. I basically you know, created this schedule around when my cybersecurity class was. So I can understand if it's not you know, the perfect schedule for people. I just hope you guys get. My main goal is to have you guys get some value out of it, not, you know, that you have to be here. Okay, so let's look at this one. This is Kuro's game played as white. I think that's what Jen is saying. I don't feel that way. Jen's views do not necessarily represent my views. I'm happy. I'm just happy if you get value out of the stream. You're funny. Anyways. Okay, so cool. So let's look at this. Yeah, no, of course, Agent. Thank you very much for joining the stream, and please, please feel free to send games if you'd like any free lessons, free analysis, or even if you have ideas for like openings or things about the game that you'd like to see. As a beginner, I'm gonna suggest that you go to chess.com, Puzzle Rush and Puzzle Battle, since I know that you use chess.com, Agent. But yeah, I think your quickest returns are going to be on doing the work by yourself on Puzzle Rush, Puzzle Battle if you're first starting out. Do lots and lots of puzzles if your goal is to improve. Yeah, I really hope I'm really happy that you've come by for free lessons, Agent. Come by anytime and feel free to submit material. No spots for tonight, but if anyone wants to send a game or suggest something that they'd like to look at, the next open spots are for 6:05 p.m. tomorrow evening. Yeah, no worries, Mario. No, if you send it, please, please send, and I'll put it in for tomorrow at 6:05 p.m. same time as today. Yeah, so this is Kiro's game. Kiro plays an Indian game with an early a3. The most popular moves here are knight f3, knight c3, and g3. A3 is number 4. It's a little bit slower in terms of development. I think in general you want to develop as quickly as possible. But this is sort of stylistic. But I would push for knight c3 or knight f3 here. Just because it's important to develop quickly if you can. I understand that like knight c3, bishop to b4 is annoying, but I don't know if it's worth playing a3 just to head off bishop to b4. Basically, a developing move has a lot of different values to it. But a3 pretty much at this point only does only works to keep the bishop from going to b4, and that's a little bit of a that's a pretty narrow focus for such an early move. I would just play straightforward, fundamentally solid moves like knight to c3 or knight to f3. A3 just doesn't do enough, I think, at this point to be the correct move for white. But I do understand it. Bishop b4 is definitely an annoying threat in these Indian games. a3, d5, knight c3, c6, knight f3. The engine's also talking about e3. The engine seems to be getting, the opening book. The opening book is getting a little bit nervous about c4, pawn takes c4 becoming defendable here. Like pawn takes knight f3, pawn takes c4, and then b5 being played after that. But yeah, no, totally, Agent. Let's look. So that's yeah, no, that's a really good point, Agent. If you're interested in seeing strategic play or strategic play or openings. Yeah, feel free to just suggest it, and I'll put it in for a slot, at the next available time. Yeah, no, thanks, Agent. It's great that you've done so many puzzles, but I would keep at it, to be honest. It's just there's so many positions in chess where you need to like play chess. The grandmasters use the phrase "play chess," and that's basically positions that you want to be maximizing in. Their openings have some value, but it's a good question, Jack. I guess I would say it depends on the time control. If they're untimed puzzles like chess tempo, I would play them to the end. I would not play single moves if you can. If it's untimed and there's no time constraint, then you know, those puzzles are used to prepare for long time control games where you'll have you know, sufficient time to play to the end. If you're doing Puzzle Battle or Puzzle Rush, I feel a lot less strongly about it. Puzzle Battle, Puzzle Rush, making one move at a time, you know, or you know, ideally you still see it to the end, but playing an intuitive best move in Puzzle Rush or Puzzle Battle, I think is more kind of acceptable. You know, especially just strategically in like Puzzle Battle, where you're trying to get as many puzzles done as possible. You know, if you have a, I would say if you have like a 90% certainty or 90 to 95% certainty, it's probably okay to play the first move. If it's I have a bunch of jigsaw puzzles that you never did, Jen, so you know that's on you. My strategy is I'll get you. You said you wanted some puzzles. I got you a few puzzles, and then you never did them. So that's my take on jigsaw puzzles, Jen. Now that you brought it up, no, it's cool. It's fine. I'm just teasing Jen. But yeah. So I would say Puzzle Rush, Puzzle Battle, the fast ones. You can play the first move if you're fairly confident of it. Chess Tempo, I would really try to solve the puzzles to the end. Those two puzzles, those two different puzzle forms are kind of preparing you for different types of things. The Puzzle Battle, Puzzle Rush is for, you know, quicker time controls. But will get you very prepared to play game in 5, or you know, up to like probably game in 30. Chess Tempo is so you win these like 40, 20, game in 60 games that are common in like FIDE rated tournaments or larger tournaments. They're preparing you for different things. There's a lot of overlap, and doing a lot of time will help you for both of them. Yeah, I would see as many puzzles as you can, but I would make a small adjustment on how certain you need to be to make the first move, based on the particular app that you're using. But anyways, just put in the time, and you'll be in good shape. Yeah, no. Thank you very much, Jack. But that's my take on that. Is you know, Puzzle Brush, Puzzle Battle, you want to maximize so you can play the first move even if without 100% certainty. But the one thing I would say is, you know, potentially go back at you know, basically potentially go back and solve the puzzles that you missed. Just so you memorize the patterns. That's one other piece of advice on those tactics puzzles. Cool. Yeah, no, I play the Italian game, Agent, but I'll go over the Italian game as white. I'll put that in for a slot during tomorrow night's 6:05 p.m. Stream. But I can show you a good Italian repertoire. Italian game is very fundamentally sound, and but a little bit more aggressive than Rui Lopez. So yeah, I'll put an Italian game, which is sort of my recommendation for a good beginner opening as white, and something I still play now. But yeah, no, thank you very much for being here, Agent, and yeah, come back tomorrow night and we'll do 15 minutes at least of the Italian game. But yeah, thank you very much for the idea, and thank you for joining the stream. Okay, cool. So here, this is, you know, basically we're looking at this game, and this is a pretty quick simplification. Bishop takes f6 relatively early, and let's look. Basically, white gets a pretty solid position with a pretty open king side. This is tricky. Probably queen to f3 is a defensive resource here. I think it's probably the best idea. But overall, yeah, this is you know, white has a good position, but needs to be very careful. Okay. So a3 I would reconsider. I think a3 probably is a slightly more passive move. I think straightforward developing moves like knight c3 and knight f3 are a better bet for you there. this is fine. Kind of a straightforward Queen's, Queen's Indian defense, Indian game. E3. Okay. F3 is an interesting move. F3 definitely gives some opportunities for black to sort of get into this king side. Bishop b7 is what's suggested, but queen h4 seems to exert a lot of pressure really quick. I have to think about this one a little bit tactically. I think basically you're trying to. Okay, so I understand this. Black is attacking you on the king side. You have a pretty good position. You have central control, and things are reasonably solid. Oh, thank you very much for the subscription, Agent. I really appreciate it. Yeah, no, please come back and please keep sending games. Yeah, it's very nice of you to subscribe, and thank you very much for supporting the stream. Tomorrow we're gonna be doing that Italian lesson for you, and that will be interesting. But yeah, so I guess I would say G3 here over F3, or neither. I mean, I don't know. It's sort of interesting. The engine is basically advocating leaving this kingside situation alone. That's sort of it's sort of difficult to do when you're getting aggressively attacked. I'm sort of wondering also about F4. That looks kind of interesting, but there's no. I guess there's at the end of the day, there's no real good way for white to respond to this with his kingside pawns. I'd slow down and I guess just wait for black to attack you. Black doesn't really have enough pieces to really create problems here. On G3, the tactic that I'm the most concerned about for black. So say options here are like Rook C1. So say you play Rook C1, black plays H5, and then you play queen. I guess you play Queen takes G4 here. So because you have this queen on this G4 diagonal, it's difficult for black to actually make much headway with these pawns. I think you can just sort of leave these pawns alone and play like knight takes D5, Rook C1, moves that don't move your queen, but do improve your pieces. So I in this situation, as opposed to F3, which creates more openings on your king side, I would go with like Rook C1. And Rook C1 basically, it challenges black to come up with an attack, and I don't quite think he can do it. He can't play H5. He can't play, he can't play G3, because on H5 he plays Queen takes G4, right? But on G3 you just take the pawn, and here, he could try Queen to H4, but then I think you pretty much automatically play G3, and then he has to either choose between keeping his queen actually pretty dislocated for the rest of the game on H3, or moving his queen back, and you'll have sufficient defense on G3, so you won't really have to deal with much threat. So here, say Queen E2, H5, and this really isn't much of a threat for white, and also the G4 pawn is still hanging. So at any point when H5 is played, you have the ability to take G4 with your queen and be in good shape. Because neither of these pawns can actually advance, your better strategy is to leave your king side alone and not disrupt it. There's an old kind of general rule of thumb that post castling, any pawn move undermines your king side structure, and that is true here. I think basically any of these moves, H3, G3, or F3, undermine the defense on your king. And seeing as you're getting attacked, you want to keep your defense as solid as possible. Here I just direct resources to the other side of the board and really make black prove the value of his attack. Neither of these pawns is movable, and neither of these pieces can really get in. So I would just leave the kingside pawns alone unless there's really a forced threat. A forced threat would be like, queen to h4. Then you play g3. That pawn move is required. But proactively challenging, these pawns which can't move with f3, I think is not the ideal strategy here. Anyways, this actually is okay. Now these pawns are anchored again, you're actually okay. So f3, considering that he didn't play pawn takes f3, this plays out pretty well. Rook c1 is good. It threatens black on this file. Queen takes g4. Really glad that you saw that because it was the necessary response after the h5 move. And now, white actually has a very positive eval here. White has been getting attacked and is getting attacked, but black can't really advance things. You're up plus 10 here. I mean, this attack has not worked for black. I guess I would say, you could have been even slower to respond and played f3, and that might have been better. But I really think you're in good shape here. Knight g3, I think, was the move, though. You eventually play knight g3. But this pressure got actually really dangerous. Let's see. Letting black get the second piece here, the bishop h4 in, was the problem. If you play f5 here, you're completely good. If you play like queen to f3, queen to f4, or sorry, wait, you can't do that because of queen. So f4 here, queen to f3, and then king takes h3. You're completely safe as white, and you win this game. So yeah, really interesting. I think this is another. I think this came down to tactics. A tactically resourceful defense was very important here. Knight g3 was the correct defensive move, but letting these two pieces get in was the problem. Here you can give back. You're up two pieces, right? So you can give back a pawn here. Now is the time. You're up to, as someone who's up two pieces. Tactics. Time for the tactics emote. The tactics is, tactical defense is your most important point. You're up two pieces. Really, anything short of black checkmating you is going to lead to a win. So that's the highest priority. Giving back this f-pawn does not matter. It gives you a defense on this g3 pawn and the ability to play queen f4, after which you're in good shape. So basically when the material situation is this one-sided, being up two full pieces, just don't get mated. Don't worry about taking this pawn. Don't worry about losing this pawn. You're up two pieces in a very simplified position. Just do everything you can to make sure that the pieces aren't lost and that you trade off effectively. f5 and queen f4 here. You're good, and you're in a strong place and you're in good shape. This is on queen f3, play king takes h3. But just basically that when the material is that one-sided, you really have just one priority. Don't get mated, because pretty much everything else will win for you. So there, ignore the pawns and play f5, and then you're good. No, you just have one priority. There's only one thing that black can do to beat you now, and it's just a quick mate. So with that in mind, moves like queen takes a7, which win a pawn in a situation where you already have a winning material advantage, is bringing back your queen is much better than that. So that's the improvement here. Anyways, interesting. Thank you very much for sending that, beginner players. Let me just put that. It's a PGN, so I'm going to put it in my... Or it's a Fen. Okay. Fens are a little tricky, but I will figure this one out for you, beginner players. Thank you for sending it. Okay. That beginner player's Fen game is in... Well, actually, sorry. I think that link. I think you may want to resend the link. If you just send the link to the full chess game on Lee Chess beginners, like just the link in the browser bar, that I can work with. Well, yeah, no, I think also that might not be a complete Fen. I think that's just Fen after 1e3. But yeah, no, just send the link that's in the browser bar, beginner players, and I can put that on my list. But yeah, thank you very much for sending the game, beginner players. We'll take a look at it for sure. Yeah. So anyways, the two takeaways here: try not to play pawn moves that are too try not to play pawn moves that you don't have to against an attack. Don't be afraid to play pawn moves, but really make sure that they're necessary, because if they're not necessary, they do weaken your post-castling structure. If you're up 2 pieces in an endgame, the highest priority is just don't get mated, because short of getting mated, you're won. Interesting game, Kiro. Thank you very much for sending it. All right, and then for our last game of the night, this is a game from Kathleen from the chess study group Discord. Thank you very much for this one, Kathleen. And let's take it from Black's perspective. So this is c4 g3. An interesting line. I think g3 is the most popular. It's the second most popular c4 e5 line. So g3, c6, bishop g2, and by d4 is the most popular move here. D4 is probably the most popular move against this English because knight to c6 is unavailable. On knight to c6, or on queen takes d4, the only move that knocks the queen off d4 is c5, and that move weakens Black's bishop by giving it less mobility. So here, because d4, pawn takes d4, queen takes d4 can't really be challenged. Can't be challenged by Black. This is why against c6, d4 is the most popular idea. But bishop g2 is fine. d4 can be played later. White may want to challenge the center with either e4 or d4. d4 is still the most popular move, but d3 sets up e4 as well. Bishop c5, castles, bishop e6, a3, a5. Pawn takes, and yeah, it's kind of an interesting situation. Black center is better here. I think yeah, I mean, no, I think Black's playing a good game. White has played sort of an interesting sideline with d3 and hasn't really made any attempt to challenge the center. It's almost like you're playing the white side of a modern or King's Indian defense here. It's or even it sort of looks like the white side of the Sicilian in some. Well, actually no, because the pawns don't really work out that way. I think it's mostly just against like the white side of a modern, where white has an open c file. Bishop g5, knight d7. Black is in pretty good shape here. Interesting. Where did this eval swing? Because I think basically here Black was in good shape. Queen e1, rook e8, knight g5, f5, and Black is solidly up. Knight e7, okay. Oh, okay. Well, knight e7. So knight e7 is a tactical error because knight e7 allows e takes f5 with this discovery on this rook. I don't know what the improvement is though. I think. I mean, this bishop's going to have uncomfortable pressure along this diagonal regardless. I mean, it's basically the piece on the board that white is the strongest with. Hey, thank you very much for the observe, Kathleen. I appreciate it, and thank you very much for sending this game. Yeah, so I think this diagonal is the strongest part of white's game here. So coming up with a good defense on that is probably the best move. Knight e7 allows that tactic, and that is somewhat, it's not terrible because, the only move I guess here is g4, bishop e4, and those moves have their own drawbacks. So it's a little bit, it's not a full pawn. The f5 pawn is not basically it's not a pawn that's worth 1 full point in an analysis. But it is still dangerous here. So yeah, so bishop e4 is an error, but g6, I think along the same lines as the last game where f3 was played in order to challenge g4. Since you're getting attacked on this king side, keeping your pawns on g7 and h7 is probably the best. Yes. I agree with that, Aphelion, in the in slow time control tactics like chess tempo. You should play the moves to the solution. In the quick time control games, or in the quick time control tactics, I feel less strongly about that. But in chess tempo, I think that's chess tempo untimed tactics training, Aphelion. I completely agree with you. But in puzzle battle, I would say if you reach 90 or 95% certainty that a move is correct, then I think you can play it. You can still play puzzle battle or puzzle rush, to the point of 100% certainty, but it is going to make you a bit slower to do things that way. It's up to you, though. Whatever you're the most comfortable with. But I think Aphelion's guidance is completely right relating to chess tempo, and is potentially right. Is a good guideline in puzzle rush, puzzle battle. Chess tempo though, I'm in complete agreement. The quicker ones, I do think you will probably perform better if you're able to make some compromise. But they're training different things. I would say that the chess tempo is good for training, 40-20 or 40 120 or sorry 40 120 game and 60. The really slow time control games, those are the ones from chess tempo, and I think those will really improve. Yeah, I think chess tempo is great, and it's free, and those puzzles are awesome. And those I would play to 100% certainty, Aphelion. So they're 100% certainty. Chess.com Puzzle Battle, Chess.com Puzzle Rush, where you really are timed. You're training for a different time. Basically you're training for a different time control. So there I would go with like 90-95% certainty. But chess tempo, yeah, on chess tempo, take it to 100% certainty, like Aphelion's saying. Agree. I agree. Here in this position, I think your safest pawn defenses are basically unchallenged h7, g7, f7. There, I think basically those are the place where the pawns provide the most effective defense for your side. Anything else, moving any of your pawns on the king side, weakens your king safety. There are times when it's necessary. There are many times when it's necessary, but in general, the pawns are, provide less king safety with h7, g7, f7. Yeah, You know, I need to take a look at Lichess Puzzle Storm because I'm hearing good things about that. I haven't used it myself, but I am interested in using it. Um, so yeah, so given that white's attacking you, playing a move like G6 opens up your kingside more. The eval shifts as well, but you need these. Or your best use of these pawns is for king safety here. Knight f6 pretty much blocks everything off, and then you know, although that's still not the best move. I guess the best move here is like knight d5 or queen to b5. It's a tricky position. This is not the easiest position. I would lean towards knight f6, but there may be other moves here that are better for black. The engine is suggesting h6, which sort of directly goes against what I was just saying about leaving the pawns where they are. But yeah, I lean towards knight f6. Knight f6, knight f3, knight ed5, and at least keep the king side closed. If you play g6 here, the king side really does become open. So like here, g6, pawn takes g6, and this is nerve-wracking. These open lines on the king, you know, have the potential to become very dangerous quickly. You know, your best move here is probably knight to f6, but you can see if you compare these two situations, say knight f6, and this continuation. This king side is getting much less attacked, or much more slowly attacked than the king side is after g6. This is you know, this structure is really difficult for black to defend. Things like queen f6, queen g7 are probably your best options. Knight f6 also is probably pretty solid, but the open lines on your king are much more apparent with g6 as opposed to like a knight move. Knight to f6 is what I'm looking at. For tactical reasons, I think the engine is suggesting h6, knight f3, knight f6, or h6, knight f3. Yeah, I don't like their continuation here. I don't think they're evaluating this quite right. I would play knight f6 here. Keep things solid and condensed over here, and white will find a less effective way to attack you. This ends up playing well. It's a good win. You know, you were able to very effectively shut down this this kingside attack. White never really got a strong kingside attack here. So even though even though they're showing basically an equal pawn situation here, you know, you've basically already really diminished the attack. So either knight takes e4, or and I think knight f6 was not a good idea at all. You know, white does not gain much from his two pawns against that rook there. That was not a strong tactic. Yeah, no, you defend this very effectively. I think after g6, and g6, you know, the issue with g6 is just these open lines. You know, you shut down white's attack very effectively. Knight f6 was the correct move here. c6, c4 was fine. I also sort of just liked knight takes e4. The engine likes knight takes e4. One principle here that I think is helpful, or could potentially be helpful, is if you're getting attacked, you want to trade off pieces, because then your opponent has less pieces to attack you with. If you are attacking, you don't want to trade off pieces, because then you will have fewer pieces with which to attack your opponent. That is that is broad and you know, has exceptions, but that's generally the case. Often trading off pieces can provide an effective defense, and it is, if you think about it. And you know, you would have to go back and look at your games, but that is very generally true. You know, if there's 4 pieces attacking your king side, and you have 3 pieces defending your kingside, but you can trade off 3 pieces directly, then your opponent only has 1 piece to attack you with, and 1 piece is not generally enough to really execute a strong mating attack or a strong material gaining attack. So trading off in a situation where you're getting attacked is generally good for you. And that's what you do. That's what you do effectively here. You trade this knight for this bishop on e4, and then knight takes knight, and then white's almost sort of starting to run out of pieces to attack you with, and then you basically get a good break in that that he plays knight to f6. Queen e6. So bishop g5 is a mistake. Knight f5 is the proposed response. Queen e6 is considered to be slightly worse. It basically leads it to equality. Bishop takes e7, queen takes e7, and then king g2. And this is a complicated. I would still think black is a little better here. Engine's saying equality, but I think that this c2 pawn really provides you with a lot of opportunities. I think eventually you're going to be able to break in on the b file. But overall, I think this, trading off this knight for this bishop, I think, was a solid general idea. They have some better tactic in mind, I guess, but trading off pieces if you're getting attacked is generally a good concept. And then I just want to see this bishop takes e7, queen takes e7 just leads to an endgame. But the attack has subsided. The attack that seemed so kind of intimidating for white goes away by trading off 2 of the minor pieces for each other. Overall, it's interesting. Very tactically complicated game. But I think of all the moves here, there's some tactical complexities here that are, that there are improvements for in this late middle game. But in terms of conceptual thinking, I think g6 is really the move that I'm the most focused on. G6 opens up your kingside in a situation where you can potentially be attacked. From a fundamental perspective, knight to f6 is a better move. Knight to f6 closes up your kingside and does not provide additional, attacks on your king. It also provides the ability to trade your knight on d7, which really doesn't have too excellent mobility for this bishop, which is centralized in white's position. So I think from a strategic perspective, this is the one that I'm the most fixated on. Knight f6 over g6. Just because from a fundamental perspective, you don't want to be opening extra lines on your king. Here, you still do an excellent job at the end of the day, deflecting all of these, threats on your king. And I think, definitely deserve credit and deserve the win for that. And there are tactical improvements here, but I don't want to spend a tremendous amount of time on tactical improvements because, I can't, at the end of the day, I'm going to be looking at the engine for the best tactical improvements. I think knight f6 is probably the best way to sort of lock things up. This basically opening of the king side while you're getting attacked is too tricky, it's too risky, too double-edged an idea. I do think paying attention to the f6 threat is definitely a good idea. Like, you really do want to keep a good handle on this attacking structure. I mean, I think white is effectively attacking you, but I think the best response is not one that opens your kingside further. I think the best response is something like knight f6 or potentially even queen f6. I sort of like queen f6 because it threatens knight takes f5. But basically, I think that's probably the way to do it. Keep the kingside closed if you can while getting attacked. Every pawn move in a post kingside position weakens your king safety. That's my thinking behind why g6 should be avoided. I think the computer advocating h6 is a little bit weird. I don't particularly like that from a fundamental perspective, but I think you're in good shape after knight f6. And then there's some tactical improvements. So I would take a look, I would take a longer look with an engine to see sort of what could have happened. But I think in terms of analysis, leave tactical improvements to your tactics training. I think game analysis, it's most valuable to be looking at strategic concepts or ways that you should be evaluating the position differently, not looking for tactical improvements, because those are tactical improvements are based off of tactical strength, but positional or strategic improvements are the concepts that you benefit from, or that are the most positively affected by your game analysis. So with that in mind, I think you got a pretty good win here. It was great. It was a good break that at the end where you got those two pieces for the rook. This obviously is a great position for black. Black's going to win this, like knight f5, knight d4, knight f3, and you win. But yeah, overall, very interesting. Interesting situation and good outcome. So, well played game. That g6 is the only move where I think is worth kind of more analysis. But yeah, so I think I'm gonna wrap up the stream. Thank you all thank you very much for sending in the game, Kathleen. Please send games in the future. It's super helpful to have like material to draw on, and I hope that was at least a little bit helpful. And yeah, thank you all for being here. The next stream is at 10 a.m. tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow. And yeah, please all keep sending your games in, and yeah, really happy to see all your participation and interest in the stream. Thanks very much for that. Everybody have a good night. Yeah, cheers. Thanks for being here. Have a good night. Thanks. Bye.